that you're seated, please state your name in full, then spell your last name for the court's record.
Michael Brown, B-R-O-W-N.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Is it all right if I call you Michael?
It is.
For Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you currently employed?
Camas-Waschouglas Fire Department.
And what is your position there?
Currently I am Battalion Chief.
Battalion Chief?
That's correct.
And when did you get promoted to Battalion Chief?
Just a few months ago. I was a captain before that.
How long have you been with Camas-Waschouglas Fire Department?
28 and a half years.
And so then will you have had training as an EMT or a paramedic?
I've been a paramedic for the last 30 years.
And in January of 2024, were you a paramedic captain?
I was.
Do you know Kevin West?
I do.
How do you know him?
Through the fire department and also a friendly relationship outside the fire department.
Would you recognize him if you saw him today in court?
I would.
Can you point him out if you see him by an article of clothing that he's wearing and where he is seated?
Blue suit, top right there.
May the record reflect that this witness has identified the defendant.
It does.
And how long have you known Kevin West?
Since he was, this started his employment at the Camas-Waschouglas Fire Department, so 22 years, I guess. I'm not 100% sure of that number.
Did your relationship with Kevin extend outside of work?
It did.
And how did it extend outside of work? What would you all do?
We would go hunting together, and he would come up to the house. I live on a river, hang out for summer barbecues and things of that nature. And I would go to his house and hang out in his garage, talk about work, things of that nature.
And now, the house that you had been to of his, was it the one that was the Waschouglas residence on, I believe it was 34th Street?
I believe so, yes.
And is that in Clark County, Washington?
Yes.
How often would you hang out with Kevin outside of work?
It was variable. I mean, sometimes once a month, sometimes a couple times a month. When we went hunting, it was several days together. Just kind of.
Were you familiar with Kevin West's marriage to Marcy West?
Yes.
What was your knowledge of their relationship?
Objection calls for narrative response, relevance.
Stay to the question first.
I'll rephrase. Did Kevin ever tell you about the state of his marriage to Marcy West?
Yes.
And did he have those conversations with you more than once?
Yes.
And so was any of did you also form personal observations of the marriage between Kevin West and Marcy West?
I don't have any firsthand knowledge of their relationship besides the narrative that we talk about at work and often.
Would Kevin have talked to you about the nature of his relationship with Marcy prior to her death in January of 2024?
Yes.
And approximately when did he bring up marriage issues or relationship issues with you for the first time?
A decade ago.
Did he continue to tell you about marriage complaints or marriage issues leading up to January of 2024?
We both engage in conversations in regards to our families and matters of such.
And so what did Kevin tell you about the marriage?
Overall, it just seemed very strained for a very long time.
Did he tell you about the basis of the strains?
I think there were multiple facets to that. how there was some differences in how they parented, some strain about the children.
Did he express to you financial strain in the marriage?
Yes.
Did Kevin, what was the financial strain that he expressed to you?
I can't remember specifically. It was just more in the ways of Marcy wasn't working, I think, and hadn't gone back to work. Kevin was working a lot of overtime, and there was just a lot of things to try to keep up, I think, with whatever their financial responsibilities were. That we did not talk about.
Did Kevin West ever discuss divorce with you?
Yes.
When did he discuss divorce from, and I assume from Marcy, divorce from Marcy?
Well, I think the topic of conversation was kind of ribboned throughout the period of time that we were talking about our families and being married and things of that nature. I think it had come up more than once, but it wasn't a new topic of conversation.
Would he have discussed potentially divorcing Marcy with you in the fall of 2023?
Yes.
Did he ever discuss financial considerations related to divorce from Marcy with you?
Yes.
And what did he say about that?
He told me he had talked to a lawyer and they were trying to go through the financials to figure out if he could afford to have a divorce, I think.
And by afford to have a divorce, what do you mean by that?
Well, he was just looking at the financials in regards to what it would entail and what would be left, and the things that you would talk to a lawyer about in regards to assets and things of that nature.
Did he express to you what those financials might look like?
I don't recall anything specific.
Do you recall him saying that it would cost approximately $5,000 a month to divorce?
Objection, reading question. Disdain. Move to strike the question and instruct the jury in it.
The question wasn't answered, so I sustained the objection with nothing to strike.
I'll come back to that question. Did Kevin ever tell you that he was seeing a woman named Cynthia Ward?
Yes, but I had no prior knowledge to that until after Marcy's passing, a few days after that.
And approximately how long after Marcy's death was that disclosure?
2 days maybe.
And what did he say to you?
He just brought the subject up. He said he'd been seeing somebody and told me who it was, which the name was familiar, but I could not recall the person by face or acquaintance in any way.
Did he tell you how long he had been in that relationship?
I think it was just determined for the conversation was it had been a while, but I don't recall him specifying dates or length of time.
How did, so this was 2 or 3 days after Marcy's death. Where did this conversation happen?
In his garage.
What was his demeanor like?
Sorry.
What was his demeanor like? in that
Still
conversation?
fairly upset and rattled, I would say.
How did he bring up the topic of Cynthia?
He just told me. I can't remember the exact verbiage of the conversation, but he just told me what that was about. I did not know that. So.
And did the topic of Cynthia between the two of you continue?
I think I might have said something in regards to, I'm not sure how much I would spread that around and tell people.
Objection, Your Honor. This relevance, this is hearsay. Move to strike and instruct the jury.
Apparently they have to resolve a legal issue outside the present closure note that live there in the chair. Don't discuss the case. I'll talk you back in just a moment. You're also approved for the transaction.
So, Michael, at some point, he brought up the conversation of, or he brought up to you something about Cynthia. What exactly did he say?
He told me he had been seeing somebody, and he said that, you know, she was willing to wait for him for however long it took, and that that was the path he was going with, was to be with her.
And what was your response to that?
I urge caution in regards to divulging that information so close to Martha's death, and just for his kid's sake and the general situation.
And what was Kevin's demeanor like when you told him that I would pause on talking about that?
It's pretty vague. I don't know. I don't think there was a big reaction one way or the other. There was nothing that would have stuck in my mind.
And after that, did you and Kevin ever discuss Cynthia again?
I've met Kevin in person twice since Marcy's death, and both times there was conversation about her, yes.
And what was the conversation about her the second time?
Just that his kids really liked her, and she was being very supportive of the situation, and I think along the lines of, you know, what a good person she was and how much she was helping him and his children.
And did you ever meet Cynthia personally?
If I did, it would have been when she was a volunteer firefighter a long time ago, and like I said, I did not have a recollection of what she looked like when he told me who she was.
That's all I have here.
Okay, what's the objection?
So, Your Honor, the objection is this. I think the question was, you know, it was regarding what he had said just a few days after she had passed about being with Cynthia, and the witness began to answer. I told him it wouldn't be such a good idea to talk about that so close to the death. That's actually what he told me in the interview as well. That's a comment like it's kind of dangerous to be talking about how you're with another woman so close to your wife dying. I think that's the wrong message to impart to the jury. It's also not relevant. What you said is not relevant because he had no reaction, so there's absolutely no relevance to what he said to Mr. West.
I overrule the objection. Most of the comments of Mr. West, his reaction or lack thereof to a comment by this witness during the conversation may have some slight relevance. Don't see any prejudicial value to it. Bring in the jury. welcome back. I've overruled the objection. Continue your examination.
This was page.
I overruled the objection. Continue your examination.
Thank you. So, Michael, he brought up Cynthia to you, and just to kind of walk back to where we were. What did he say to you specifically?
He said he had been seeing her and that she had told him that she was willing to wait for him for however long it took. I can't assume too much about where that came from as far as the context of that. And that was the direction he was looking to go, when it was available.
What was his demeanor like when he was discussing Cynthia?
At what point?
On that initial conversation you had with her.
He
about
was
Cynthia?
still very upset during the conversation that we were having. He had also learned that the medical examiner was not going to release a toxicology screen at that point in time. He became very upset about that.
Objection, non-responsive.
Sustained.
Move to strike the remaining portions of the
Let
witness's
the
answer.
last answer stand as is. However, listen to the question asked, answer that question, then wait for the next one. Don't throw in things that the question isn't designed to answer.
Yes, sir.
And so after him telling you that about Cynthia, what did you say to him?
I think I cautioned him in regards to telling very many people about that because it could hurt his children and because this was such a new situation that I was a little shocked by it, and I was more concerned with, his children, I think, at that point in time.
What else, if anything, did you both discuss aside from Cynthia when you went to go visit him? That 2 to 3 days after.
Objection calls for narrative response.
Sustain his phrase.
Did Kevin say anything else to you those 2 to 3 days after you visited him that you can recall?
Objection, same objection.
I sustain the objection. When I ask him questions about specific things that might be relevant to this case, you could do that, but just to ask him to talk about everything we said, it's not an appropriate way to ask the question.
Did Kevin discuss Marcy's passing with you on that day, 2 to 3 days after January 8th?
I'm sure it was a topic of the conversation. I don't have any recollection of specifics.
Did he discuss what was going on with the medical examiner?
Because he took the phone call during the conversation, we did speak about that after the fact.
And what did he tell you?
Objection, relevance.
He just told me that he was expecting the tox screens to come back at that point in time, and he was told that wasn't going to happen, and he became upset.
How many times did you see Kevin following Marcy's death on January 8th, 2024?
3 times.
So we discussed that first time. I'm assuming it was the first time that 2 to 3 days after.
Yes.
And what was the second time?
When I visited him, when he was living in his trailer in Sandy area, Oregon, Sandy area.
And what was the final time you saw him?
It was maybe a year ago. I don't remember the time. It could have been in September, in fall. I honestly, I don't know.
Did Kevin attempt to discuss with you what he thought happened to Marcy West during her death at that trailer visit?
Yes.
What did he say to you?
I didn't allow him to say anything to me about it.
And I'm sorry, it was hard for me to hear you.
I told him I did not want to hear I didn't want that information.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the answer, the question and the answer on the relevance. Under 403, calls for speculation, move to strike and instruct the jury.
Overrule the objection, allow the answer to stand. Next question.
Now, you would have been on scene on January 8th, 2024, correct?
That's correct.
Were you working, or were you there in some other capacity?
I was working.
And what was your role in that day?
I was the fire engine captain of Division 41, downtown Camas Fire Station.
When did you realize that you all were responding to the West residents?
Somewhere between our station and the address. Some things came up on the computer that were abnormal in regards to wording, and then my driver engineer asked because he recognized the general area of the address, who was the reporting party, and I could scroll down to the end of the computer screen, and it showed West residents.
What was your role on scene when you arrived, if any?
Initially on scene, we moving up to the bedroom. I started helping with getting medications out of the medication box. I think maybe I had opened one medication to hand to the crew performing the resuscitation. Then after that, I was directed by Captain Castle to go help Kevin. So at that point in time, my treatment stopped, and I jumped across the bed to where Kevin was to try to help him with what was going on, and to also in some way try to make sure that he wasn't interfering with the resuscitation, because it was a very elevated situation.
So were you said that you were trying to help him not interfere. Can you tell me more about that?
I was just I got behind him, and I kind of put my arm around him and was kind of holding him. We were both on our knees at Marcy's head with firefighter Young, who was having to do airway management. And so I was just at that point in time more there to support him and try to, let him know that there were people there that were trying to help him, and, we were doing everything we could.
And now him still being in the room for a unknown caller, would that have been not common? Like if you hadn't known the caller, would they have been allowed to stay in there?
It's dependent. Usually we try to clear the area so that the crews can work, especially in tight areas, in larger areas, living rooms and things of that nature where people can stay out of the way. Sometimes it's not 100% always.
And now when you're was it correct that you and Mr. West are kind of up against the wall, and you're kind of like creating
between the bed and the end of the wall, at the end of the deck? Yeah.
Okay. And so at any point did you observe on that side where you were kind of cradling him, was there a end table or side table there?
I've been asked that. I do not remember. I do not recall. I do not think there was.
Would you yourself personally have moved an end table, side table, or anything to help hold Kevin?
Not to my recollection.
Were you able to observe a cardiac rhythm at any point during that resuscitation efforts?
I did not.
What rhythm did you hear being called out during that time?
Asystole.
And what was Kevin saying to you? What was his demeanor like on scene when you were kind of holding him?
Very distraught.
What was he saying while you were holding him, if you recall?
He was talking to Marcy a lot, telling her, it's going to be okay. I'm going to come back. It's okay. Things of this nature. trying to be encouraging for the code to have a positive outcome.
Was he telling you or anyone else what had been happening earlier that day with Marcy?
Not while that particular time frame during the code was happening. Was not there when the initial crew showed up. I would assume that would have been delineated then. He did not talk to me about that.
Did the call come in initially as a seizure based on your recollection?
That is correct.
And can you remind me, how long have you been a firefighter paramedic?
How long have I been a firefighter paramedic? I've been a paramedic for 30 years.
Based on your training and experience, have you ever responded to a first-time seizure that progressed into a cardiac arrest without?
Objection, relevance, anecdotal.
Sustain.
All right, I don't have any further questions.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Brown. You and Kevin were pretty good friends, weren't you?
I would say so.
Because firefighters are kind of like a family, aren't they?
Yes,
Like your second family, sometimes your first family.
correct.
And you share a lot of personal details. And he shared details about his family, and you shared details about your family with him, didn't you?
Yes.
You both talked about the things that were going well and the things that weren't going well in your marriages.
Correct.
Not the kind of thing you would talk about with just anybody on the street, but because you're kind of like firefighter brothers.
Not even other firefighters necessarily.
Okay.
Just depends.
And you've been to his house before?
I have.
How many times?
Too many to count.
What's that?
Too many to count. I have no idea. I have no idea.
Where would you go when you went to the house?
To the garage. Yeah, the whiskey drinking bar set up there. That's where we spent our time.
You go there every time?
What's that?
Did you go there every time?
Or he went to my house, but yeah.
No, I mean, I'm sorry.
Yes, the garage is where, yes, that is correct. That is the spot. Sorry.
You ever meet Marcy?
Sure.
Okay. Would she ever come out and join you guys in the garage?
No.
Did you ever go in the house and have any conversations with her?
Objection, relevance.
Sustain.
Did you get to know Marcy very well?
No.
And how many years were you good friends with Kevin and going to his house and him coming to your house? How many years?
20 plus.
Now, talking to Kevin about the problems he was having in his marriage, you had similar problems about 20 years ago, right?
I've been divorced.
Objection.
I'm sorry.
Objection, relevance, Your Honor.
Sustain.
You at some point advised Kevin he should get divorced, right?
Yes.
When you got the house, you say you came out of, you were at 41 that night, right?
That's correct.
And you were normally at 42 at that time?
Yeah, I was working a shift off of my normal shift, which I was working Kevin's shift. That's what the only reason that I was actually on this call. It was called a debit day shift, so.
And so you went over there, your help wasn't really necessarily needed except to comfort Kevin, is that right?
It seemed like everything, all the jobs were being dealt with accordingly.
You say that Kevin was distraught.
Yes.
You ever seen him that way before? You had spent countless hours with him, days and weeks going hunting, going to each other's houses. Had you seen him upset or sad before?
I've seen him sad, and I've seen him upset.
You guys weren't afraid to show each other emotion.
Judging relevance.
Overruled.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Read to that.
Yes, Your Honor. Michael, did you used to work under Kevin?
Yes.
And did you choose to work on his shift?
I did.
Objections, outside the scope of classroom.
Overruled.
And you spent a lot of time with Kevin, correct?
Yes.
Did you observe a change in his demeanor and changes of him at work in December of 2023?
Objection outside the scope and relevance.
Apparently I need to resolve another legal issue, so go ahead and put your notepad down. Don't discuss the case. So in general, although it may be technically outside the scope, the solution would be the witness could be stepped down and then immediately recalled to ask the question on direct. So the question is whether it's appropriate or not. Make your offer proof as to what it is you want to ask the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Brown, how long did you, before January of 2024, how long did you work for Kevin? With him as your battalion chief?
3 years. Whatever his promotion date was, I moved to his shift when we changed shifts and stations and things of that nature.
So did you notice a change in his behavior at work in the months leading up to January?
Yes.
And what was that change?
He became incommunicative. He spent a lot of time at the station when he was on duty with his door shut in his office. We had some personnel issues we were working through on our shift, and some of those things kind of fell off the table, which was not necessarily normal considering what it was. I had talked to him prior to the change of the year, because that is when we change stations and change shifts if we choose to by seniority, whether or not I was going to continue working for him because things had so dramatically changed.
And can you kind of explain the dramatic drop-off a little bit more clearly? Like, what was it like before, and then what was it like in December of
Well, he was an
2023?
integral part of the shift, and then all of a sudden he wasn't.
And how wasn't he an integral part of the shift?
Well, again, he became fairly non-communicative throughout the shifts, hard to get a hold of, hard to get answers back from, detached.
And did those changes cause you professional concern?
Yes,
And did you discuss those concerns with Kevin?
yes.
And what concerns are they the same concerns you just relayed just now?
Yes.
And what did he say to you about that?
He knew that he was having some problems, and he promised he would do better.
That's it, Your Honor.
You object to testimony on other than scope grounds?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your entire statement, Your Honor.
I said, do you object to the testimony on other than scope grounds?
Yeah, yes, Your Honor, I object based upon relevance, I object because it calls for speculation. It basically says he became a bad worker for a while. I think the part where he says, I talked to him, he said he had some problems, I think that has some limited relevance, but as far as he become uninvolved, he spent a lot of time in his office, I wanted to switch stations, I don't think that has anything to do with the case. I think that's completely irrelevant.
You have argument?
Your Honor, I think that this is relevant under his lay observations of the defendant. Mr. Walker has also brought up several times about his demeanor, his affect, what he was like, how many times they'd hung out together, if he had ever seen him cry, if he had ever seen him emotional. And so I think that this is also relevant. I think defense counsel has opened the door.
Okay, with regard to testimony related to his demeanor in the month of December, or in the period of time immediately before the death, whether it changed and how it changed, as described by the witness, and whether he indicated that related to problems outside of the station, I'll allow that testimony. Testimony about his work performance, whether people wanted to work for him, whether it would cause this witness professional distress, that's not relevant on redirect.
Understood, Your Honor. Thank you.
Bring in the jury. Okay, I've resolved the legal issue. We'll continue your redirect examination.
Michael, would you have been working with Kevin the month prior to Marcy's death in December of 2023?
Yes.
Had Kevin's demeanor at work changed during the month of December 2023?
Before that, but yes.
When did his demeanor begin to change at work?
Several months prior.
Your Honor, I'm going to object, it's not responsive, it's also a violation of court's prior ruling.
I overrule the objection.
What was his demeanor like specifically in December of 2023?
I would call it detached.
To your understanding, was this based on things outside of, problems outside of work?
That was my assumption.
And how long had there been approximately a demeanor change from Kevin that you observed?
How long?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the question. If I understood it right, is how long had this been going on? Is that the question?
I understood the question. It was, how long had his change in demeanor occurred, at what period of time?
Yes, Your Honor.
I object, this is to be limited. I object to that
I
scope.
overrule the objection.
When did you first notice a demeanor change in Kevin West at work?
Probably in the summer.
And would that have been the summer of 2023?
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Recall?
No questions.
Can the witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.